Welcome to Gaia University's Thrive Now webcast series, hosted on Gaia U Radio. For today's call, we have Angel Kyodo Williams talking about who's driving change. Let me first introduce co-founder of Gaia University, Andrew Langford. Thank you for joining us.
Well, welcome everybody to the first of the Gaia University Thrive Now webinar series, in which we invite pioneers from the Thrive movie. So if you go and have a look at the Thrive movie website, you'll see a section which is called Pioneers. So that's the people who have provided some of the core thinking for the material that's gone into the Thrive movie. This is the first one of those that we're doing today. I'm sure that some of you will have seen that the Thrive movie has been generating a good deal of spirited debate on the internet. Most of it generally positive, although because it's fairly unconventional and it's pushing open some different doors of thinking than people might normally experience. There's some controversy out there too, which is, I think, quite helpful. We're very pleased to be associated with the film. This is partly because Foster and Kimberly have been parenting Kyle, one of our bachelor's graduates now. He graduated just recently. They were delighted with the way that Gaia University provides people with the scope to experiment and research just exactly what they want to do without constraint, just so long as it's inside the permaculture ethics there. And so they were happy to endorse Gaia University as one of the two. Gaia University and our friends at Wisdom University have also been identified as people who might take the Thrive content and attend to it in a special sort of way. And I'm really conscious that whilst we've got this wonderful opportunity for the publicity, as it were, that comes with the Thrive movie, we also, as a university, take significant amount of responsibility to ensure that our approach to the material that's laid out in the film is an approach which is thoughtful, contains a fair amount of critical engagement, as it were. So we don't need to feel like we have to endorse everything in the film. And at the same time, we welcome the opportunity to go through some of the doors which the film has opened. So it's a very exciting moment for us. So this evening's call is managed on the IT front by Jennifer English, supported by Ron McCorkle. Thank you very much, you two, for taking care of that. And I know that Jennifer has got some technical bits that she would like to share with us, and now would be a very good moment for that. So Jennifer, if you'd like to let us know what we need to know.
Great, sure. Hey, everyone. What I would like to let you know is that you have the capacity to ask questions or have comments shared by raising your hand. And on webinars like this, we raise our hands by pressing buttons on our keypad. And those buttons are either on your cell phone or your home phone or on your Skype pad, not on the computer keys, but on the pad that you have in Skype. So if you have a question that comes up for you around IT, or a question about the process of the call, then I would like you to press the number 1 button to raise your hand that way. If you have a question during the call related to the content of the presentation, if you could please press the number 2 button, so that way we'll know who the proper person is that can call on you and to answer that question. We'll also be doing breakouts during the call, and I'll explain what those breakouts mean as we're moving into the call later on. The last thing I want to just announce is that our presenter today has provided a link to a short 3-minute video clip, and I sent that to each of you in your email account. And it's also posted on the dashboard for Maestro. So if you could make sure that you have that link available in an open browser so that when we get to that point in the call, you'll be able to click on it, that would be great. Thank you. That's all I have for IT.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And this call is just a little big for us to do a go-around and hear from everybody, but I'd be delighted to hear from 2 or 3 people who might just let us know where they are, something that's going well for them, and how they are. So if anybody'd like to do a little check-in, if you use the process button, the 1 button to raise your hand, you could do that now, and I'll take your offering. Anybody out there like to check in? Okay, so we'll move along now, and I'll introduce you to Angel Kyodo Williams, who's our speaker for tonight. She's a spiritual teacher, an activist and artist, and she's the founder of the Center for Transformative Change in Berkeley, California, in the United States of America. And she's one of the Thrive movement pioneers. You can find reference to her on the list there. And she's got a talk to give us this evening in which she's going to be focusing primarily on how the inner and the outer world changer might be brought into congruence so that we act from a place of balanced integrity. So welcome to very much indeed to Angel Kyodo Williams. And over to you, Angel, if you'd like to take us away.
Great, thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I can hear you great.
Great, thank you. So as Andrew said, my name is Angel Kyodo Williams, and I'm very happy to be one of the first pioneers. I'm the pioneer of pioneers on the call for Thrive. It was a pleasure to be involved in the movie, and as Andrew said, I think it's quite valuable, the kind of discussion and contention that and controversy and also great joy and illumination that the film is generating. I think it says a lot that people take enough interest in it to be challenged by it, and so I think that's all good. What I would like to share a little bit with you all about today is this notion of who's driving change, because it is in the concept of what it will take for us to thrive. One of the most overlooked areas is the area of what we have to do on the inside. What's the inner work that we have to do? Because we tend to over-focus on the outside. And my contention, if you will, is that ultimately nothing that we produce outside will not eventually devolve to the level of our internal practice. So therefore, we maintain a certain responsibility really to make sure that we are doing the internal structural work that's necessary to support the external systems that we seek to shift and to change in order to support a more fair and sustainable and equitable society. So I, as the beginning of a project that my organization plans to launch in 2012, we came up with the idea of getting to a point, getting the larger community of people that do the work of change, and that's whoever identifies themselves as an agent of change in the world, of social change. And I'll just clarify and to say that I mean progressive social change to the extent that we're seeking out, our aim is to seek out greater equity for all people, so that as the movie speaks to, so that all people have an opportunity to thrive, and the pathways to those possibilities are accessible to all. Project looks at one of what I think is the fundamental challenges in getting people to acknowledge the value and importance of doing the internal work that's necessary to sustain the kind of change that we're looking for outside, by saying, maybe when we approach this, we tend to go out into the world and say, hey, look, we have the answer to the challenge of why change doesn't get sustained often. And my inquiry was maybe people don't have the question. They're not clear that there's a question. And so this little animation that I'm sharing with you all, and I hope everyone has access to being able to see it, is a pilot version of what will be a fuller animation and eventually a presentation that gives us an opportunity to probe the question, and as Rumi says, to learn to love the questions themselves. And so if everyone if you have access, to take a moment to view the short video called Who's Driving Change. Maybe I should ask if anyone has any questions or any challenges that they have and want to raise their hand for any technical challenges, then they should press 1 for any technical challenges. And if there's anything burning before we watch the video briefly, it's just about 3 minutes and change, and you want to raise your hand, 2, and I'll be happy to call on you. I'm gonna take that to mean that everyone has the video, and so if you would just go ahead and click on the link and take a moment to watch Who's Driving Change. And just so that in case you're wondering, there isn't any sound. It's more like a slideshow than a full-on animation. As I said, it's a pilot, and so please do go ahead and watch the short film. We can actually bring that to a stop. That's a version of ours that was we were doing a preview with it. And what I'd like to do is first to see if there are any clarifying questions about the content, and just to give you an idea of what I'm looking forward to is to get clarifying questions and then do a short breakout session to have people converse with each other and check in with each other about just what they thought. I'm not going to get to hear everybody, unfortunately, but just what they thought about the content, what it brought up, what you might have noticed in there. And then if there's something that you want to say, obviously, other than about the film, I think you'll have about 2 minutes each, if I'm not mistaken. And then we bring the group back together and talk about either this idea of Who's Driving Change, some aspect of Thrive that you may want to bring up, or we'll just let the conversation flow and see where it goes. So first, are there any clarifying questions in a case in which someone was not clear or wanted to understand anything at all about the short video that we've just seen? And apologies, I know there are other people that are getting on the call as we go, and so we'll be fairly open with the conversation so that everyone can be included. If there are any questions about the film or anything that someone wants to say before we break out, please do just raise your hand by pressing the number 2 key. I don't see any hands going up. Is that right?
Okay, so you ready for your breakout?
Okay, yeah, just one quick second. So I just wanted to say to everybody, like, as a person that sort of developed or conceived of an idea, it's hugely relieving that no one has questions just about the basic nature of the film itself. It just says, okay, we might have gotten something across, at least in this first pass. So I appreciate that. And yes, Jennifer, if you would give us a hand. Let me pose the question. In the film, there are multiple instances of what we would say, or of ending up with roadkill along the path of life. That's basically what the film is doing. And as we go along, just as it occurs in our life, our little character, also known as you, finds themselves in a position in which the roadkill, the impact that they're having in the road of life, gets to be greater and greater. If you could see, it started out with a small squirrel into a medium-sized raccoon, and then to a deer, and then as we very unfortunate went on to Granny and the small kids going across the street there. So the question, or you can break away from the question if you have anything else that seems to be relevant and you just want to probe, but the question that you might want to just start with and get a conversation going with is, how do you relate to the impact that you have in your life? And one of the hopefully useful things is that you don't need to speak about particular things necessarily if that's not comfortable for you, but you can talk about your squirrels, your raccoons, and your deer, and just open up the conversation to anything that you might want to say or any illumination you might have about how it might be different if you was in the driver's seat as opposed to that other character called Inner You. So Jennifer, if you would put us in the breakout groups. We'll put you in groups of 3, I think that's right. And
yeah, I'll explain the different numbers if that's okay.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Great, thank you, and that was really, really clear. So what we're going to do is we're going to have breakout groups of 3, and each of you will have 3 minutes to talk. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 1 minute in the very beginning to introduce yourself to everyone in the group, and I'll ring a bell so you know when that 1 minute is up. And then from then on out, every 3 minutes, I'm going to ring another bell to let you know it's time for the second person and then the third person to speak. Okay? So if you have any questions related to IT while you're in the breakout group, just go ahead and raise your hand number 1. Like Maria, I see you have your hand raised. And then I can come and speak to you individually. And if there's any other needs that you have, the breakout is going to be a total of 10 minutes. So, if people get dropped or whatever, either just continue with a group of 2, even though you're starting with a group of 3, or just kind of hang out until the breakout's over if there was any problem. Okay? So thank you very much, and I'm going to go ahead and put you in breakout groups right now.
You are now in a breakout. Please begin. You are now in a breakout. Please begin. Please change partners. Please change partners. Please bring your conversation to a close. This breakout session is now ending.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. I hope that breakout was really fruitful for you. I think most of you noticed that I was jumping in and out of the different rooms and got to hear a number of your awesome comments and the questions that were arising for you and what felt alive for you. So that was really rewarding to hear. And I tried my best to follow through with if anyone had any IT needs. I know that Tim, you have had some IT needs, and I've been trying to connect with you, but every time I try, I can't hear what you're saying. I apologize. And other than that, I hope everyone had a really fruitful breakout. So I'm going to hand it back over to Angel, who is going to harvest from everyone what came up for you. Angel?
Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much. I hope everyone's conversation was fruitful. And what I'd love to do at this point is to give each person an opportunity to just share into the larger group whatever's really present and alive and juicy for you. It could be something that you said, and sometimes just as we're ending, the real illumination comes to us. And so it could be something related to what was said in your group, or you can share out from the group. Or you can offer something else. And so what I'll do is just go around maybe and start. And if you want to pass, you can just, we'll wait for a second and you can just go ahead and pass. But we'd love to hear from everyone. And so I'm going to start with, my understanding is that Jeff is not able to be heard. So I'm going to, if that's not true, and Jeff, you can raise your hand and put a 2 up, then we...
Yeah, let's go ahead and ask Jeff. Can you share right now? Okay. I've got Jeff on Skype right now, and Angel, so how about I'll see if I can work something out with him, and otherwise I'm going to go ahead and tell you the order of the names that are going to be called. Angel, is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that way people have a heads up. So how about Marissa, then Roxanne, Nala, Maria, and Brett with Maria, Ron, Misty, Andrew, Lauren, Leora, and Will is probably the order you're going to, it might not exactly be that, but let's assume that'll be pretty close to that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Angel, and she can call on people individually now, starting with Marissa.
Okay. So Marissa, would you like to offer any comments into the group?
Hi, I'm going to pass right now.
Great, thank you. So we'll move on to Roxanne.
Hi. I guess with what I was sharing before, it was mostly around the lines of wanting more information about free energy and wanting to recognize that our problems are a reflection of all of us, and to not blame any particular elite population, but to take responsibility and act from that space of responsibility and acceptance and equality.
In our call, we were talking about the idea that in the Occupy movement, they've been talking a lot about the 99%, but we must have to, similarly to what you're saying, Roxanne, is that we also need to recognize that the so-called 1% are also affected by the imbalance that we suffer in our society currently. With that, we'll move on to Nala.
Hi. Yeah, Roxanne was kind of summarizing a little bit of what we talked about. I felt that there was a lot of, I heard the phrase total world domination many, many times. And as I said, I don't doubt that there are people who have that goal. But it was generally felt disempowering to me to keep hearing a focus on that, and that this is something that's being perpetrated on us. It was kind of a victim mentality that I really disagreed with me, because I feel like we're all participating in a system and creating. We create the 1%. I mean, we're all connected, and we're creating this structure, and we're participating in it. So it just felt like it was kind of a repetition of a an old us versus them, bad guy, good guy kind of movie, which reminded me of Avatar, the way that I felt after I saw Avatar, which was generally positive, but there were some big paradigm shifts that needed to happen. Oh, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Maria, we'll move on to you for offering comments into the group. And just so that everyone knows, after we take comments from everyone, then we can, raise questions and go back and forth in a more freestyle. But right now we'll just go around and make sure we hear everyone's voice. So Maria?
We went with the questions around impacting our lives.
Maria, this is Jennifer. Can you speak up a little bit?
Yeah. Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah. We went with the questions around impacting our personal lives, and we talked about a few things, but one thing that I noticed we both talked about was around slowing down in our own lives and not taking on as much as we maybe have been, so that we can have more integrity around our commitment and thereby have less impact on the people around us and in our lives, or more positive impact.
Okay, that. And
I think that you have someone with you, don't you, Maria?
Yeah, Brett.
Oh, great.
Yeah, hi. Maria kind of summed up our discussion. We didn't talk about the film at all, actually. The Thrive film, we talked about the short silent film that we watched. And yeah, she pretty much summed it up, so I'll just pass right now.
Thank you, Brett.
Welcome.
And we'll move next to Ron.
Hi. Well, the short movie was interesting, and it's hard for me to kind of describe what I'm saying, but I've been hearing so many people, not just here, but all over, that are starting to realize the significance of what's going on in the world, especially with the Occupy movements, I guess, has brought it out a lot. And my feeling is, I think it's good on one hand, and at the same time, a lot of things become exploited when it becomes mainstream, and similar to greenwashing and things like that. And I guess it's part of the world change, and it's all good. And at the same time, I feel like there's another niche of wisdom that's still out there. So I don't think it's in my best interest to be satisfied with this change that's occurring. I realize a lot more is out there, and that's what I'm searching for, and that's all I have.
Ron, do you want to say more about the wisdom that's out there that you're speaking of?
I just think that the nature of things is a lot more than what we see. And by the time we accept something as a good change, we may actually stop our drive for searching for the new, not new, but the not yet obtained wisdom. And so I don't find myself being satisfied yet. I don't know what it is, or I wouldn't be searching for it.
That's great. I think it's important for us to not stop our searches, absolutely. So Misty, we'll move on to you if you have some comments.
Yes, I've been viewing the film, kind of directed my thoughts, or tried to inwardly with regard to my potential project. I'm not yet enrolled at Gaia, and I've had just a drive for many years to take on a project, which is a small town in Alabama, rural, was thriving, is not anymore. It's become to a lot of change that, it's been nationwide. And then as things that happen in my own life, I've gotten to live here more, and I see that there's just a huge lack of awareness, where someone else commented that they heard, other people talk about, and have conversations about change and what is changing, what's not changing, and what should be. And I'm kind of seeing myself as the only person who seems to care. And I'm in a position to do something positive, but I am looking for that wisdom that I'll probably be looking for all of my life, to know what the right thing is to do and how to go about doing it, and what and how many levels of change I'm looking. I think I'm looking at a lot of micro change, or I don't know if that's the term we use in psychology anyway, and then also macro change, like large behaviors from a lot of people. And so that I saw, as each animal or as each entity kind of got larger, I saw like the way that, or my levels of what I needed to think about, the wisdom that I needed as increasing. Made a parallel there.
That's great. Thank you so much. Let's move on to Andrew.
Yes, I was thinking about the unrolling, the never-ending unrolling roadkill of life piece. I like the metaphor, and I'm thinking that somewhere along the line, it feels as if, for me at least, the story has changed somewhat. So instead of coming across more furry animals walking across the road that I mow down, it feels like my life has gone a bit more constructive than that, and I'm really interested to notice that there must have been a transition point that I could probably identify and describe and think carefully about how it took place, because it would seem to me that if I knew enough about my own transition into a more so maybe what I can see is that when I look out the rearview mirror, I see trees growing, things like positive things like that. So if I knew how that had happened, then it might be that I could be much more of an ally for other people for whom that might be about to happen too. So that's what I was thinking about. My primary thinking. Check.
Yeah, to figure out how it is that we can actually reduce the impact that we're having. And, in some ways, that goes back to the comments that Marissa and Roxanne were making about, moving ourselves into an empowering position, and not so much focused on what might be happening out there and some kind of a global elite or whatever it might be. But can we move that conversation? Maybe that's true. But what happens when we move that conversation into, as Misty was saying, the micro, where we're able to begin to empower ourselves to start making changes right in front of us. That's great, Andrew. Thank you. We'll move on to Lauren.
Hi. So I really liked that video because, ever since I decided to really start looking at my life and this planet as my reflection, I've often had the question, well, if I'm not choosing this, then who is? Which is kind of like what I felt like that animation was about. That's kind of like, well, if I'm not driving, then who is driving? And I think a lot of really wonderful things have happened. We find ourselves in a predicament where we can no longer separate our actions from what we see on the news or even what we see in our own neighborhoods. It's like down to how I choose to feed myself. We're seeing how that affects the whole global community at large. It's something we can't deny anymore, which I think is really beautiful. So we're seeing the interconnectedness of life in a really physical, material way because of the crisis that we find ourselves in. And I think we're also moving to a place where we're slowly starting to discover that that interconnectedness within the invisible realms also, or we could call these the inner realms, or the the single interconnected shared inner realm, whatever you want to call it. But we're starting to see how the inner landscape really is the outer landscape, and I think we're also collectively getting to a place where we're more able to take responsibility for that. But it's a pretty big deal to take responsibility for the inner landscape, knowing that the inner landscape is the outer landscape. And what that animation brought up for me, and what I've been working a lot with in my own life, is how to shine light on, my shadow side, which is the world's shadow side, without going into a place of guilt. And I've also been really interested in cultivating forgiveness, as not only forgiveness of ourselves, but, like within these larger social movements that are happening right now, like the Occupy movement, I've been wondering how to bring forgiveness into these really big, powerful energies. And I think it starts with self-forgiveness, which that's definitely the thread that animation activated in me. So
thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm sorry, I misspoke earlier. It was Roxanne and Nala that were talking about the global domination, and because Marissa had passed, and so excuse me for misnaming you. And so we'll move on to Leora.
Okay, hi. Just unmuting
Hi
myself. Hi there. Thank you for coming on this call. It's great. So I think I'll speak about the movie your animation movie. I got really curious about the separation of the you that was the one that got more and more into fear and seemed to be bringing on more and more dramatic fear situations out of the huge amount of fear the you was experiencing. And then that other character that you call the inner you. And it got me reflecting on that understanding that some people might have about a kind of split, and the inner voice, which might be the true wisdom, and the outer, more shell-like ego that lives in the fear, and how we can really understand all of that as some kind of integrated being, which I think we are an integrated being in some way. So I guess that gets a little close to religion. But I just wondered, I had some questions about that I thought you might be up for responding. In Gaia University, we use a technique which we think is really helpful, which is reevaluation counseling, which is a method by which one can, by discharging our emotional baggage, then be able to reevaluate our particular life situations in ways that enable us to think better about them. And I imagine that you're using meditation as a tool, but I'm curious to hear your response to those thoughts.
Yeah. So the thing is that there is this sense of separation. I think that we often feel that the idea in the film, in the short video, is that the separation only exists because we haven't fully integrated the relationship, right? So it's sort of like if you want to go someplace and you're not actually driving, it turns out you're not driving, then you better get a relationship with the driver, because if you don't have a relationship with the driver, you're not going to go where you want to go. And I think the evidence for most of us that we don't have full relationship with our inner selves is that we have roadkill, because surely we're not running around trying to do it on purpose, right? And so we look at our lives and we say, I just like you in the video, at first, a squirrel, it kind of happens, but as the impact gets greater, you begins to try to avoid the impact and finds that you is not able to, right? So you're not able to avoid some of the impacts, and that should raise the question for us: what's going on here? Who is driving? Who's in the driver's seat? The eventuality, we hope, that shows up on the other end of the animation and when we do the tour, is that the integration, and we could call it religious, we could call it spiritual, we just call it integration. That the integration, that the coming into relationship may provide something of the solutions and beginning of not control but relationship to being in our lives, a deeper relationship to being in our lives. So I'll say that for now, and we can open that conversation again, but I want to make sure we get to hear from everyone. Will, we haven't heard from you yet, and Marissa, if you may want to say something, and if we got Jeff back, we can do that too. So let's start with Will.
Okay.
Thank you, Leora.
Yeah. I think I'll mention that I am doing my learning intentions and pathway design for my upcoming year with Gaia University. And as part of this process, I've decided to use a book called At Home with Holistic Management, where that's about holistic goal setting. And holistic goal setting aims to identify who the driver is and how we can better work with them. It looks to figure out what our fundamental motivations are rather than more surface level motivations that we normally look at. And then once we've figured out those very important aims, we can organize the rest of our lives around that. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, this is Jennifer, and unfortunately Angel just dropped off the call. So I'm going to see if Marissa has anything.
Hi, this is Marissa. Yeah, I will add that today I started a genealogy project of researching my family tree and finding more about my ancestors. And as I'm thinking about this, like the lineage that I was descended from and the way that some of my ancestors have been in this country for several generations and some immigrated from Ireland and Scotland more recently, I'm just finding it a really fascinating way of understanding myself more and the story that I come from, and yes, like it brings more value and perspective to like shifting the paradigm of the global elite and the us and them, and just like I also had a really fascinating conversation with a neighbor on the Greyhound bus the other day, and he was telling me how he's extensively researched a lot of similar things as the Thrive movie, including free energy and also the royal family, and he had found that like everyone, all the presidents of the United States, their family tree traces back to the English royal family. And so for me, that was a really fascinating like perspective on this government of like who our choices are if we choose to vote, and sort of like it does seem that there is a particular like group of people who are controlling so many of our resources. And I'm losing like concluding thought, but I guess those are a bunch of pieces that I'm thinking about right now.
Thank you. Sorry, Marissa, I fell off somehow got disconnected from the call, but I got to hear your comments. And are we able to hear from Jeff? Jeff, your microphone is on.
Hello. I don't think I'm in Haiti, so my internet connection.
We've got an every other word for you, Jeff.
Take that as a no.
So I want to just say thank you, everyone, for your calls. I feel like I did a little bit of research and trying to understand the Gaia University, and I'm just super excited about the group of people that we have on the call. Just very rich comments and very thoughtful, and the level of engagement that you all have is great, and I just want to say that that's just not always true when I'm doing calls or presentations, and so I just want to say that I really appreciate that. I think it would be great. I don't know if anyone had any particular questions that they wanted to ask. I just want to honor, Thrive. I'm a friend and sat on a board with Kimberly Foster Gamble, who is the producer, and became friends with her husband. Kimberly Carter Gamble and her husband Foster I became friends with. And that's part of how I got connected with the film. And just to be clear, I think that the very nature of Thrive as a movie is that it's not set out for anyone to buy anything, and you don't have to believe any particular part of it. And at the same time there's valuable information that may help any one of us sort of fill in some of the blanks. And so I just want to really encourage people to be open with any questions that they have. I love them dearly, and we have different opinions on lots of things. We've had very rich debates on the way into my participating in the film, and so all of that is welcome and open. And so if there's any questions that people have in particular and want to speak into anything about the film, let's just open up the conversation a little bit, and I'll be able to see if you raise your hand with a number 2, and see if we can let the conversation be free flowing. Anyone want to offer anything? Yeah, Jeff, if we can get your voice in there. Okay, so Jeff, you're on. If you can speak, let's see if we're able to hear you. Wish we could have you. Yeah, sorry, Jeff. Sorry we're having the technical challenges. I think we're going to move the mic to Ron. I'm so sorry that we're not able to hear you, because I'm sure you have good things to offer, Jeff, and hope that in the next time you jump on a call, you'll be able to have a cleaner connection.
Yeah, and I just want to add about Jeff. He's in Haiti right now, working down there with permaculture and farming. So awesome that he's joining us all the way from Haiti.
Totally awesome. Thank you. Thanks for your work there, Jeff. So, Ron?
Yes. So I have a general question about Thrive. Will it be, will it be released for free. Somebody sent a link around for the YouTube version, and I'm not sure if that's the actual movie or if it still needs to go through the pay it forward. Can you answer that?
Yeah, the intention, as you can imagine, it's a pretty, the words people have been using is slick production. They put a lot of energy into the production, and so the pay it forward and the sale of the DVDs, this is mostly self-funded, and so the pay it forward enables them to recoup some of the outlay of their investment, not only of them personally, but first and foremost, there were other people that believed in Thrive and its need to be out there, and so they made investments into it. And so I know for just personally that neither of them are seeking to gain from the movies, but the pay it forward. I actually did see the YouTube. I just saw there's a full version. I was looking for the runtime of the movie, and I saw that there's a full version of the movie. I hadn't tried to play it, but I did see it. I did see it up there. I believe that the ideal thing is to use the pay it forward and support the filmmakers in being able to put this message out there. And just the way that we might go to a movie, there's an incredible amount of information, a lot of energy and time went into this. It's been years in the making, many years in the making, and so I think the pay it forward is the means. And there are also, just as we're doing here in Berkeley, California, on Thursday, there are screenings in which other people are securing DVDs, and home screenings are free and perfectly fine to have.
Okay. The only reason I was asking is, like I said, I saw a link for it. I definitely want to support it, and I supported it twice without being able to see it due to some technical difficulties. That's why I wondered. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for being willing to support it. I'm going to call on Will next. I think we have Will.
Hey. Getting back to the little video that you had us watch, I'm wondering what techniques you like to use to get more in touch with your inner self, or figure out what kind of subconscious motivations you have.
I am a long-time meditation practitioner. Not too many years after starting meditation, then I also started yoga. I learned that our minds are up to trickery, and meditation actually we can get pretty skilled at bypassing a lot of things, and so for me, having a body practice has become essential. Having some kind of practice in which, there's the famous dancer Martha Graham says the body never lies, and so I find great value in body practices, and so I'm actually also trained as a yoga teacher and have developed a system, a school of yoga that puts yoga into a context not so much of India and in the past, that we honor its origins and its roots. We also bring it forward into a social justice context and help people to relate and understand that how they show up on the mat is how they show up in the world. And so can we learn to tolerate discomfort, and can we begin to have a relationship where our heads aren't riding our bodies, whether they're in relationship to one another, that we are, and that we learn to not over-aggress and hurt ourselves. And one of the key things we like to say is back off. Right? Can we learn to back off? And we talk about that in terms of what we say the twin wings of effort and release. I like to often say that effort is our job, but the outcomes are none of our business. So we have to learn how to put our full effort into things. Has been my experience and is my practice, is to really learn how to put my full effort into things, to give deep consideration to what I'm doing, put my full effort, and then not try to hold on too tight to the outcomes. If, like anyone else, I'm interested in what comes out on the other side, but if I hold on too tight, often I can stymie the outcomes and impact it with the holding on too tight. It's like holding on too tight to a steering wheel. As we show in the video, if you hold on too tight, you're also not able to move smoothly. So those are two of my practices, and which are obviously well known and get around a lot. But I also I'm a former martial artist, and so I also do a couple of different practices, including what's called we call it 3-1, but it's a 31 movement practice with about a 4-foot long stick, 31 very specific movements, and the idea is to be able to see in our bodies behaviors that show up in our lives. And so an example of that, we do a partner practice, and in the partner practice, what we learn how to do, we're sort of facing each other and using there's no contact of the stick with the body. The stick, it's called a jo. It just represents an extension of our energy, because that's how we make change happen in the world. We extend our energy out into the world beyond just the physical limitations of our own body, right? We put energy out. And so in the partner practice of this, the jo, what we're doing is figuring out how do we have full contact in relationship with other people. So really engage people and allow that engagement to be a full touch, where we really face people, we really show up, we're really present. And presence is ultimately where all of my practices come down to, is how do I be more present and remain present, and when I fall off of being present, get back on the horse of being present again. But how do we stay present with people and not have that become hesitation on one hand, and on the other hand, not have it become aggression. Often when we come into intense contact with others, it brings up our stuff, and we either retreat into a hesitation, and so we don't bring our full selves to the table, or on the other hand, it stirs up a little bit extra energy, and we may find ourselves being more aggressive, more forward moving than is appropriate for the situation. So finding a balanced presence is ultimately the desired outcome, if you will, for all of the different practices that I engage in.
Thanks, Angel.
Andrew had his hand up, and I think that's about the last question we'll have time for. Give ourselves a chance to wrap up.
Okay, yeah. My question is, which parts of the Thrive movie pushed your buttons, as it were, that did you find were challenging for yourself?
That's a great question. I have a unique opportunity to have seen Thrive, in different iterations, and to actually have conversations and push back. So I feel fairly gifted in having had that opportunity. I think it's not so much what's in Thrive, but what's potentially behind it. I'm really open to the notion of extraterrestrials. I love the crop circles, by the way. I just, whatever belief, whatever resistance I had to believing that crop circles just aren't done by people running around on skis or something, that was completely taken away from me, because they just had such phenomenal imagery of them, and I thought really great points. Some of the potential ideas that are behind the notion of the extraterrestrials were, I wouldn't say it didn't push my buttons, but it gave me pause. I was like, not in the film, but when I sort of did further research on some of the concepts that the people that brought those ideas forward or were holding, I was challenged, or sort of I was given pause by some of those things. And I think that's probably the most sticky things. I think the information about the Fed didn't push my buttons in the sense of like, wow, I don't believe that, but it was really confounding, to recognize. And I don't know if you all know, but there's a news article that's going around now in the States and maybe also abroad as well about how the Federal Reserve made these huge secret loans to the banks, supposedly to get them, back on track, but they ended up with huge gains, huge profits. I think it's something like $13 billion or $15 billion in profits. So this idea that there's a private group of bankers or individuals, a private corporation that has been given a fairly unchecked and unregulated power to issue currency into this system and then withdraw it, really rankles me. It rankles me, and it rankles me because I know the cycle that they speak of, and I want to just say, back with Roxanne and Nala, I'm not sure about the global elite and the global domination scheme. I just think we're all out of control. So I think maybe if there ever was a global domination scheme, that they're out of control. They're out of control of the whole thing too. This spinning ball feels like it's nobody's driving it right now. It's out of control, and therefore, we all do need to take responsibility. But I have seen this cycle, particularly for communities of color that have fairly limited resources and lose their resources in this cycle of extension of credit and boom economies that are then pulled back. So the people extend themselves and extend their resources with the promise and the hope that they'll be able to leverage that into, greater opportunities for their lives, and they end up losing it. And so a great deal of wealth, resources of land in particular, and property has been lost in that cycle. So I've seen that myself and known it in my own circles and history. So that one is really hard for me. It just doesn't. I'm not a huge regulate everything fan, but I feel like a group that is self-serving being permitted to push that cycle is just not fair.
Yeah.
Thank you for asking.
Great. Thank you very much, Angel. And so this is Andrew here. I'm just going to wrap up the call. Thank you very much for coming and joining the Gaia University family for this evening. That's been a delightful conversation and very specific in some of your thinking about how we might go forward with this integration of the inner and the outer, which is a very potent and useful message for us to be working with. So thank you very much for being the pioneer of our pioneering first call. You did a great job there, and thanks to Jennifer for her IT support. That was really helpful too. So folks, I just want to remind you that the next call in the series is Charles Eisenstein. He's the guy who wrote about the Thrive film, The Story is Wrong, but the Spirit is Right. There's a little YouTube movie of him giving that speech that you could go and have a look at. He's on the 13th of December, so please come along to that. And then also we're doing a Thrive Now community conversation on the 7th of December with Gregory Landway. He'll be leading that on regenerative economics. So that's the 13th of December, Charles Eisenstein, and the 7th of December, Gregory Landway. So thanks all of you for coming. This has been a very wonderful call, full of good thinking and good information, and I bid you all good night wherever you are on the planet, and look forward to the next call. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night, Jennifer.
Yeah, lots of love.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great night, everyone. Good night, everyone. Blessings.
Thank you. Alrighty.
That's sweet.